Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericashow.com. Happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're glad to have you here. Sounds like you're in a good mood already. Well, you ought to be. Today's a very special day. I needed an extra hand this morning. I had a lot of things to do and not a lot of time to set up. But thankfully, here I am, not sweating at all, because guess what? I've got my best friend and my right hand woman joining me right now. The lovely Stephanie Peterson is here in studio. Nice to meet you.
It's Family Friday. That would be wonderful.
No, but you will be back on Friday for Family Friday.
Oh, yes. A big old dose of moi.
Yes, I needed an extra hand this morning. Stephanie decided to throw in and get up early, and thank you.
I've been an aspiring roadie ever since my Warped Tour days, so I love this stuff.
She's my roadie. Thanks so much, Stephanie. You're going to stick around with us until we get Tony Lovasco on the show today.
For about 30 minutes.
So for about 30 minutes, we'll have the lovely Stephanie Peterson. Give her a round of applause and say thank you.
Yeah.
You can't see all of the technology that's hooked up today, but we had a whole lot of work to do this morning, and she was here to help us out. So thank you, lovely Steffi. Glad to have you here.
Absolutely.
Yep. Family Wednesday, we'll call it, say John Rails. Thank you, John.
Today is Family Day.
Tucker's surprising admission. The Hollywood Reporter yesterday published text messages of Tucker Carlson with a headline that attempted to paint him as a racist, but I don't think that was really the story. I saw Hannah Cox actually posted about it this morning, and she
just passed by it before the show started.
She said the same thing that I was saying about the real story from this report. We'll talk about that, you and I, here in just a couple of minutes. Tony Lovasco will join us at 7:30 a.m. this morning to talk about the transgender pushback here in the state of Missouri. Left-wing activists pushing against the Attorney General of the state of Missouri's emergency order to halt gender transition surgery. Some of those would have been for adults. We'll talk to Tony Lovasco about that this morning at 7:30 a.m. At 7:51, Stephanie, did you see the video of the TJ Maxx shopper yesterday?
No.
It was trending on Twitter, so I'll have to show it to you a little bit later. But a man tried to stop two shoplifters at a TJ Maxx in California, and he was getting attacked because the woman that he stopped was, of course, a black woman.
Oh, okay.
So how dare you stop a black person from shopping, from
Right.
shoplifting? And here's the thing. I'm really glad that he did that, not because it was a black woman, but because I shop at TJ Maxx. We shop there a lot.
We
And
do.
when people shoplift from our stores, that means the prices go up for us. So
Absolutely. Just like what happens at Walmart.
exactly. And besides, it's not like we see gender anyway. So gender is not a thing anymore. So, man, what really is a woman anyway? So kick her ass.
It's stealing to me. That's my 2 cents
Kick
here.
her ass, Seabass. We'll talk about that at 7:51. I'll play the clip. And at 8 o'clock today, Judge Andrew Napolitano. It's going to be, we got the judge on.
Yes, today.
A lot of guests. The judge is going to talk to us about the story of the feds arming themselves like crazy, buying tons of ammunition. And then another big story that I wanted to ask him about was, what does he think about the director of the CIA being on the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs? We're going to talk about that today. It's really, really weird.
Everybody partied with Epstein.
Yeah.
He was a popular dude.
Yeah, but the CIA director,
that's not cool.
Yeah, not cool. We'll talk about that with the judge at 8 o'clock, and that should be interesting and hear what he has to say. Daniela Pensack is going to be joining us this morning. And
buddy.
we got so many smoking hot beauties on the show. Yeah,
she's like a Marilyn Monroe in my eyes.
Yeah, she is. She made the top hottest libertarian list this year for sure. She definitely deserved it.
She took my spot because I couldn't be on it.
Yeah, for sure. And then there was who else? Okay. Oh, we're going to talk to her about. We're going to talk to Daniela about a story in New York City. Apparently, some guy pooped on a pride flag, and now he's being pursued by the NYPD for a hate crime.
Oh my gosh.
Stephanie,
if you pooped on an American flag, would that be a hate crime?
No, because it's okay. You can poop all over the American flag all you want.
You just can't burn it, right?
You can do whatever you want.
Oh, okay.
But you can't poop on a pride flag because it's considered to be a hate crime, apparently. So my thing is that I think it's just a homeless guy who needed some toilet paper.
Some tissue. I mean, at least he was a little more resourceful than the COVID people during the pandemic. We had no idea what to do without toilet paper. Well, just get a flag, people. The flag behind your head right there.
Oh my God, this is so great. All right, well, we're glad to have my lovely wife Stephanie here for a few minutes here. So let's get to the story. Thanks so much. Make sure that you smash that like button if you're watching us today. We're glad to have you here. Smash that like button. Smash it. We're glad to have you here today, joining us on any of the social networks that we're here on Rumble. We're streaming at Spreely TV. We're also over on the God, Rumble, YouTube, Spreely, Facebook. We were on Twitch, but we're suppressed. We're banned on Twitch, and then we're also I can't think of where else we're at. We're at YouTube.
Well, you're on all the podcast
Yeah, we're on the podcast networks as
places
well.
too.
Yeah.
Podbean,
Yep.
Apple.
Yep, for sure. I see Nelson65 is here. Todd in Minnesota, Kermode Bear, Cries of Treason, all over on Rumble. Glad to have them over there. Nice to see you on Rumble. Our Rumble crowd has been. Blue Trike isn't here yet. Haven't seen him yet.
Oh.
Make sure you click that like button over on Rumble as well. Glad to have you here. Okay, so let's hit the news. It's time. News you can use. This big Tucker Carlson story really caught my eye this morning. The Tucker Carlson text that set off a panic at Fox, and this is what the Hollywood Reporter claimed was the news because they're obviously race obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not how white men fight. So this was apparently the text that Fox News freaked out that they're claiming led to his youster.
Right.
The New York Times revealed this message that so worried executives that it precipitated the shock exit of the anchor. So a racially charged and bloodthirsty text. You could tell that they're very, very unbiased there.
Yes.
Sent by Tucker Carlson about the assault of a protester by Trump supporters was reportedly a key factor that precipitated the anchor's shock exit from Not Fox News last year. That's what they're saying. The New York
Okay,
Times
so
is
this
saying.
text was instrumental in him leaving.
Right. It was sent the day after January 6th in the Capitol attack, and it was a reaction to a video clip of an assault that had occurred weeks earlier. Now, in the text, Carlson reacts to 3 Trump supporters beating one lone protester. It's unclear what the race of the protester was.
Right.
But
so they could be beating another white person.
Yeah, exactly. And it's Antifa, so it probably was a white person. Jumping a guy like that is dishonorable, obviously, says Tucker. It's not how white men fight, Carlson writes. Yet suddenly I found myself rooting for the mob against the man, hoping they'd hit him harder, kill him. I really wanted them to hurt the kid. I could taste it. Now, that's what the New York Times, the left-wing media is all going to be talking about today.
Right. I mean, that is very disturbing.
Quite disturbing, obviously.
Yes.
But you know what? He's probably vocalizing what a lot of people feel, because if you consider this, didn't you? And maybe you don't feel this way. Maybe this is just my testosterone burning up inside me. But during the race riots and the protests in Minnesota, the one where Kyle Rittenhouse shot the thing, I wanted those protesters to get their ass beat. I wanted I call them protesters. Let's call them what they were: rioters. They were burning down businesses. They absolutely, they deserved violence to be done to them because they were doing violence.
Yeah,
in that sense.
As you know, I really struggle with any type of aggression or violence, even in karate.
I know you do.
Barely just do kumite for fun.
I know.
So for me, it's hard for my mind to get to that place.
Yes.
But I do know that back during like 2012-ish, I got really angry at anyone who was not a libertarian. And I did feel that
kind of rage.
Passion and rage inside of me.
This is why some people would be concerned about ever having a woman for president. And I would say that I admit that I would be concerned about it too, just because I really want to ensure that whoever is going to be in charge of the military is capable of violence.
Right.
It's not that I want them to do violence, but to me, it's like that Jordan Peterson quote that I've talked about to you before. It's like a good person is not someone who is incapable of violence.
Right.
A good person is someone who is capable of violence, but who keeps it under control.
They restrain themselves.
Right. A good man is a monster who is capable of doing great violence, but chooses to control it. Anyways, let's continue, because the real story here to me is later in the text, because Carlson actually admonishes himself for his bloodlust. And here's what I think the real story is. He says, "I'm becoming something I don't want to be," he writes. "The Antifa creep is a human being. Much as I despise what he says and does, much as I'm sure I'd hate him personally if I knew him, I shouldn't gloat over his suffering. I should be bothered by it."
Yeah.
He concluded, "I should remember that somewhere, somebody probably loves this kid and would be crushed if he was killed. If I don't care about those things, if I reduce people to their politics, How am I better than he is? Wow. That's
Right,
powerful.
and that shows me he has a conscience. I was a little worried he was a psychopath in his first statement there, where he really did want somebody to die.
Mhm.
But then once he showed he has empathy, he can actually feel for this person. It made me not so worried about him.
Well, I mean, I am worried about him because I feel as if, he probably, he is the voice of millions of people who
Mhm.
agree with him, and maybe they don't agree with him 100% of the time. The people who watch the Wake Up America show, Stephanie, don't agree with me 100% of the time.
Exactly.
And so but probably people feel who watch this show regularly, and I think I can say this comfortably, probably feel that like I represent them to an extent, right?
Absolutely.
That
And
are
I mean, a lot of the videos, we see his headlines.
mhm,
I mean, they're just like outrageous.
mhm.
Like beware, they're all very negative,
Yeah,
aggressive.
they are. Well, there's a lot of aggression out there.
Yes.
There's a lot of people uh who feel the same way that Tucker Carlson feels about like issues like immigration and issues like demographics and things that are really the third rail of politics that you're not supposed to discuss.
Mhm.
Tucker Carlson says. And one of the things that I think, that I definitely agree with him, that he took a side that it's not kosher to take in the mainstream media, and from what I understand, apparently Rupert Murdoch sat down with him, his boss,
Mhm.
to dinner, and was upset about Tucker Carlson's lack of support for Ukraine. And
Yeah.
when I say lack of support, I mean I don't support Russia. I know a lot of like libertarians, quote unquote, and like conservatives have come out and said that they support Russia, which I think is
I know. That's disturbing
is
too.
pretty effing stupid, if you
Yeah.
will. Um, but um, I don't support providing military aid to Ukraine,
Right.
or if you want to go over there and fight, a lot of people have. Go do it. That's your right.
Voluntary. Mhm.
Absolutely, go and volunteer and do it.
Yeah.
But I absolutely do not support the United States getting involved in that, because I don't think that we want to escalate to a war with Russia.
No.
And you know what? A lot of
Mhm.
people disagree with us on that. But Tucker Carlson was one of the few people in the media, Stephanie, who actually agrees with that concept. And he got a lot of hell for that. He got a lot of pushback.
Non-interventionism?
Well, yeah, well, to an extent, right?
Mhm.
But here's the thing: the Pentagon was celebrating him being removed from Fox News.
Wow. So government's in bed with media.
Oh
We
yeah,
know
oh
that.
yeah, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. It's the kind of thing that gives you pause and makes you remember that
Yeah.
the media, it used to even. I think the media was always in bed with the government, because actually, if you look back in history, the government would embed reporters with soldiers, and in doing so, rather than having them be sort of independent journalists following along with them,
Yes.
they would, they essentially found a way to manage the stories, because they didn't want, bad stories about the conduct of American soldiers to make it into the newspapers.
Right. Did watch a movie recently about the Civil War era, and where don't they kind of like pay off journalists to like report on certain things? So
Sure.
when people are running for campaigns,
Right.
it was part
Well,
of this movie we were
you know what
watching.
a really good example of this would have been was maybe Citizen Kane.
Yes.
You know
That was one of
how he
them.
was a
Mhm.
reporter and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I mean, it's yellow journalism in a sense, right? It's not
What's yellow journalism?
like tabloids and BS and things
Okay.
like that.
Yes.
If let me find an actual exact definition of it, because I think it's an important concept and we don't want to get it wrong. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, thank you very much. My lovely wife, Stephanie Peterson, is joining us in studio today, talking about Tucker Carlson's, I mean, to me, staggering admonition of humanity. Journalism that is based upon sensationalism and crude exaggeration, right?
That's pretty much what all media is about now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Equating murder and dismemberment with smoking pot is the worst yellow journalism, is like
Right.
right. So, that's an
Yeah.
American term that they present little to no legitimate, well-researched news,
Mhm.
while instead using eye-catching headlines for increased sales.
I
Well,
mean, that's what Tucker Carlson does.
I mean, that's what Tucker Carlson does, but he did
Yes.
it better than anybody. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: guess who else was doing it for a while, but they're out of business now? Vice
Vice.
News. Vice News. Yes, well done, Stephanie.
I like their documentaries.
Yeah, well, they used to do really great documentaries, but now they're it looks as if they're preparing to file for bankruptcy. They were a very hot media startup for a while, and I think, yeah, Tim Pool used to work for them. I know.
Oh, during the Wall Street.
Yes.
He was on Wall Street during the
Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street.
I believe,
yes.
yeah. But I know Gavin, not Newsom. I want to say the governor of California, but Gavin. He's a right-wing commentator with glasses.
The guy we watch.
Yeah.
Watch him on YouTube.
I've been on his show a couple of times. We watch him.
Gavin, yes, Gavin. He has like a
big
really
beard and glasses.
Beard. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways,
He's
Gavin.
very metro.
I think he was. Yes, he was one of the co-founders, I believe, of Vice News initially until they kicked him out. But they've been struggling for years to find growth, and they, it's possible they might find a buyer and avert bankruptcy. But at the moment right now, it looks as if this is what I'm reading. Vice Media has been engaged in a comprehensive evaluation of strategic alternatives and planning. That's like word they're in trouble. The company's board and stakeholders continue to be focused on finding the best path for the company. Following a bankruptcy filing, which the people expect could come in the next week, Vice would seek to sell itself through a court-supervised sale process in bankruptcy that would allow it to remain in business rather than being sold for parts and liquidated. But if they can't find a buyer, Vice News go bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They said they had that investment company that could take over. I don't know what they would do with it.
Well, they would...
unless they find a white knight, they said, then they'll have this other investment company that'll take them.
Well, yeah, in that sense that they might actually... they might break it up into parts, right? So like, let's say you wanted if you wanted to have like a bunch of cameras and equipment and things like that, you're basically like buying a car for spare parts.
It's like an estate sale. Vice is having an estate sale. Come get our stuff.
Yeah. Well, and then you can use the brand, right? You can put the brand on things. And Vice was a magazine for a while. I don't know if they still publish a print magazine, but I know that they I used to see it. It would get shared around New York City when I lived there, but
it's so sad, really. I mean, BuzzFeed just went down.
Good, yeah.
Vice went down. I really liked BuzzFeed. I'm entertained by it, though it's
you're
not politically.
Well, the other stuff. Well, here's the thing. There's BuzzFeed's still around. It's just the news part of their thing that's going out of business, right? For example, Vice is all news, so their entire organization is going down.
Yes.
But with BuzzFeed, they're still going to bring you your listicles and your top 10 Disney. Top 10.
It's my reality show side.
Top 10 Disney princesses that you are today, or like which cupcake are you this afternoon, or whatever
stuff.
Yeah. So, anyways, you can text the show today with your thoughts on these news stories at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear from you today with your thoughts on the news stories. We've got lots more to discuss, but again, if we want to hear from you, then make sure you send us a text message to that phone number, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the news of the day.
Is it 573?
Correct. Say
319-1586?
That's right. 573. Yep, 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear from our listeners.
In an emergency, I can always dial it.
That's
and
correct.
I'll find you.
Exactly. Kermode Bear over on the Rumble live stream says, Vice is garbage now. Used to be pretty cool 15 years ago. Unfortunate. Yes, no, I agree. Fed Up Kentuckian says, I've never heard of a conservative saying that they support Russia. There was the woman, Lauren Wichik, she was the Republican Senate candidate from Delaware. She says, a lot of people and I'm not saying this is you, Fed Up Kentuckian, but a lot of people sort of, Lauren Witzke, that's her name. They kind of close their eyes and la, 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 I'm not listening. Most people don't they don't hear what they don't want to hear. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people like that. I found the clip, but it's let's see, it's 3 minutes and 51 seconds. Yeah, where she talks about how she feels a connection with Putin. Here we go. Hold on.
Oh, wow.
This is from a left-wing news site, but I mean, it's a legitimate statement that she made when it was CPAC last year. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Slightly out of context?
Yeah, if you're listening, Fed Up Kentucky, and take your fingers out of your ears here and take a listen to this.
Aiden Ross is a scumbag. That's what a lot of people...
What the heck?
Also, Russia is a Christian nationalist nation. They're actually Orthodox Christian. I'm Russian Orthodox. So, you know, I actually support Putin's right to protect his people and always put his people first, but also protect their Christian values. I identify more with with Putin's Christian values than I do with Joe Biden. So, you know, like there is that. You know, there is that there. You know, Christian nationalist countries also are a threat to the global regime, like the Luciferian regime. It wants to mash everything together, but Putin takes care of his people. He looks out for his people. I watched as he deported, like they literally walked them through the streets, the criminal illegals who were coming into their country. They walked them out and they escorted them out and they said, get out. You know, I can respect that. I can respect that, and I can respect.
Dumb bitch.
We were talking to a Russian couple when we were in Japan, and they were not happy with Putin. They did not like what's going on.
Oh yeah, no, the Japanese people are like they're pooping their pants because of Putin's aggression. But I mean, Japan and Russia have always historically kind of been.
Like we met when we were eating those pancakes.
Mm-hmm.
They were literally from Russia.
That's right. Yeah.
And they were like, we do not like what's going on. We don't want to be a part of this.
No, because they wanted to go to Japan, but they had to go through all of these back routes and all this stuff to be able to, and they live near the Ukrainian border and stuff too. So they
had to take multiple flights just to get to Japan because it's so hard to travel nowadays from Russia. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Luciferian regime. That's your standard Republican these days. Anyways, what are your thoughts on that? Send us a text 573-319-1586.
Yeah, that lady was getting herself into a hole there.
No kidding. Yeah, you could say that. We got to give a shout out to Todd in Minnesota who dropped in the tip jar. Thank you, Todd.
He did.
Yeah, he did. We appreciate you.
Cool.
Todd dropped a buck in the tip jar. Super grateful for that. Make sure that you guys send us a you know, what do we call them?
Super chats?
Super chats over on
Super
YouTube.
chats.
Super, yes. Yeah, super. That's great. Thanks so much for that, Todd. We appreciate it. You can support the show that way or become a monthly sponsor. We got a new monthly sponsor the other day. Libby decided to do it because she was some of the like Mug Club people from Steven Crowder who were kind of like, maybe we should not support someone who's mean to their wife, and you know, support people who are nice to their wives.
They're orphans now; they have nowhere to go.
Yes. So, if you want to support someone who is nice to their wife, you can.
That's right. We do sell mugs.
We do sell mugs. Yeah, at apforlibertyshop.com. Then you can become a monthly sponsor over at our wakeupamericashow.com/support website.
I wonder if Crowder ever had his wife on his show.
I don't know.
That would be interesting.
That's an interesting
Family Friday.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, let us know. The UN shouldn't be encroaching on Russia. I agree, Todd, but the UN shouldn't exist. Todd, Minnesota says, even if we don't like a country, we should still practice détente. And Todd, I think you and I are in agreement on that. We'd love to hear those kinds of opinions. Make sure that you share them with us today on our live streams or send us a text. Another person did send a text. Oh, was Fed Up Kentuckian. He says, we have no business in Ukraine. At the same time, Russia is being backed into a corner by NATO. And NATO, we end the Russia-Ukraine war. Okay, that would be nice. I would like to see NATO ended. However, don't see that happening anytime soon. And
NATO would end it.
North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it's basically after World War II, we set up this in order to protect against communist expansion. We set up like a treaty to protect, you know, Western cultures. But I mean, you know, I'm very much.
We do think as libertarians that NATO should exist.
I would say most libertarians do not agree with that. However, it's not anti-libertarian to have a treaty because it's constitutional in the sense, right?
Treaties are part of the Constitution.
Treaties are absolutely a part of the Constitution as long as they're properly ratified by the U.S. Senate.
Most of the time, things aren't.
Right. Some people claim the income tax wasn't properly ratified, and
probably wasn't.
It probably wasn't.
Yeah.
There was like one state that was kind of a maybe. It's iffy on it, but you know what the reality is, Stephanie? Government being forced at the end of the day is like you're going to get the government that you get when the gun is in your face. So you can say that a law wasn't properly passed, but at the end of the day, if they still send the cops to come and get you because of a law they claim that they can enforce, it has the same effect of law, whether we like it or not. Taxation is theft. Government is violence. Somebody's sending me pictures of what looks to be a pit bull this morning. I guess.
Like pictures of what?
Somebody sent me pictures over on the text. You know what it is? I think I've triggered a lot of people with my anti-pit bull memes lately.
That triggered me a little bit too with that.
Really? Why's that?
think all pit bulls are bad. I don't like to make those extreme blanket statements.
Stephanie, we can't leave our property. We pay taxes. Stephanie, you and I, we pay taxes.
Yes.
We are armed to the teeth.
Right.
We have a stun gun. We have, and why? What are we more worried about when we go for walks? Getting mugged?
We are worried about dogs, but they're not just pit bulls.
Yes.
They're also the Bernese Mountain Dogs. Those things are huge.
Stephanie.
We're also worried about the German Shepherd down the street. So it's like there's
the German
different breeds.
Shepherd is a pit German Shepherd mix, Stephanie.
What?
It's part pit bull. Yeah.
German Shepherd.
Yeah. But what's the number one dog that we got to worry about when we're in our neighborhood?
Oh, because those are the people with the owners that are the most stupid.
Yes, exactly.
They're the ones that don't watch their dogs.
That's bigoted and
So
racist.
it's like, that's not the dog's fault. That's what I say. It's not their fault they were born.
Well, it's not their fault they were born, but we could just make them unalive, and then they don't have to be. That it's not their fault anymore. Nobody has to worry about anything. But at the end of the day, pit bulls are a terrible dog that were bred for the purpose of baiting bulls, hence the term pit bull. And people want to claim that there's no bad dogs, only bad owners.
Yeah.
But that you're trying to claim it's all training, but the reality is that dogs have these things called instincts.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I saw Quest. I know he has a pit bull, and he said his pit bull is harder to train than most.
Whoever this person is says he's not a pit bull. DNA tests say husky and chow. Come on in, Tony.
Oh my gosh, I used to have a chow mix.
And he loves you and gives kisses.
Yeah, my German Shepherd chow mix was aggressive.
There you go. Then
yes.
Then put it down. Okay. That's why we like tiny pit bulls, Frenchies, French bulldogs. Just mini pit bulls anyway.
Just hold them.
So let's give Stephanie a round of applause. Stephanie, thanks for being on the show today for the round.
Didn't get to the other topic. Maybe we can save it.
We'll get to that for Friday. Okay.
Cool.
Hey, thanks for coming in and help me set up
You're
this morning,
welcome.
Stephanie. You're going to help me get Tony Lovasco mic'd up.
That's right. I'm going to be the stagehand
You just
here.
walked in. Give Stephanie a round of applause again one more time. We're going to go to commercial break. When we get back, Tony Lovasco on the transgender pushback here in the state of Missouri, and maybe he'll whip out the brass knuckles. Oh, wait, those are illegal. We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Hello. Good to see you.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, And we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Glad to have you here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Did you like Steffi there? That was so nice of her to come in, wasn't it? Really helped me out a lot having her help me set up today on the show. Make sure that you click like on that stream wherever you're watching us on any of those multiple networks. I can never remember which ones we're streaming to and which ones we're banned from, so if we are able to be seen today, make sure you click like just to say thanks for free speech and down with censorship. All right, well, this man, he's no chicken, joining us on the show today. He's one of the bravest men in the Missouri House of Representatives. Did I just assume his gender? Joining us now live in studio is Tony Lovasco. How are you doing, Tony?
Doing well, Austin. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you there. I'm going to resist the urge to make a joke about the chicken in your hand. It is a rooster, but to say nice, I'll just say nice chicken. How's that? Glad to have you here, Tony. And the reason why I thought it was interesting is because you guys are apparently fighting some local battle out there about, like, is this in Wentzville for
It is.
having chickens on your property?
Yeah, so, I just think it's all across the state, various communities, but part of the district I represent, a small sliver, is the city of Wentzville.
Mm-hmm.
And the folks there are kind of up in arms, kind of divided half and half over whether or not to allow people to have chickens in their backyard.
What is the resistance to this? I've never understood the opposition to chickens.
Agreed. Yeah, so I wrote a letter along with several other reps and senators to the council trying to convince them that they should put an ordinance in to allow it. The biggest pushback, quite frankly, is people don't understand how chickens work, what they're like. They assume that they're all going to be roosters, they're all going to be making a lot of noise,
Right.
that they're dirty, smelly, all that sort of thing. And reality is, most of the time your neighbors could have chickens. You wouldn't even know if you couldn't look over their fence. So, it's a very innocuous thing. Most dogs are going to be more annoying neighbors than chickens, but people have these stereotypes and misconceptions.
It's NIMBYism, right? The not in my backyard thing. Like, I don't want anybody having chickens on their property next door, right? right? And then it's like, for all they know, they could be benefiting by getting eggs and things like that, and having the local like barter system going on and things like that. It makes no sense.
Absolutely.
All right, well, good. I'm glad that you're pro chicken there.
Yes,
I'm glad to
absolutely
have
awesome.
you. Tony Lovasco, pro chicken. Let's hear, Tony, your thoughts on our experiment in Missouri here on the legalization of marijuana. I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one and tell you that despite having gone through college, despite having been a libertarian, despite having lived in New York City, and and partaken of the fruits of the vine, I will say that I smell it almost everywhere now. It is rather obnoxious to a large extent. I mean, at what point does your wafting of cannabis like become the proverbial punching of the nose, if you will?
Well, I'm not sure it quite reaches that level just yet. It is a little annoying, I'll agree.
Hmm.
And the reality is, it was fairly expected. I think that any time that you're going to have a massive change in laws, you're going to have some initial kind of splash where people kind of get used to the new paradigm and they're perhaps overindulging. That being said, I mean, the reality is businesses, organizations can obviously decide what they want to have on the property. I think we're going to expect to see, as more people push their luck, we're going to see more pushback, and generally speaking, more places just saying, "Hey, we don't want you doing this here."
Do you think that'll be like local ordinance kind of situation where it'll be like, hey, no smoking in public? Because I mean, that stuff is pungent, man. And the thing is that it's kind of like the question of cigarettes, where we as libertarians, we kind of had to struggle there through the 80s and 90s as they were pushing bans for cigarettes. But the question of just how much secondhand smoke someone can consent to is an actual question of pollution. And in this sense, if somebody is, getting high in public and blowing that smoke out there, somebody else could be getting a contact high that didn't consent.
Sure. To be clear, Amendment 3, which, as you know, I didn't support, but, it is the law in the state of Missouri now. It does not allow for public use. In fact, it's actually a specified crime, which is
Mhm.
kind of an odd thing to have in our Constitution. I think the main issue, quite frankly, isn't necessarily folks that are smoking in public so much as indulging perhaps in their vehicle or in their homes. They leave, they're then kind of just wafting of the smell on their clothes and whatnot. And they don't necessarily have to be actively smoking in order for it to be, kind of obnoxious.
What
It's a little bit harder to regulate that in the way that you could, actually smoking.
I mean, if my apartment complex doesn't have an ordinance or doesn't have a prohibition on something like that, and I'm sharing a shared space with someone, if I live on the second floor and that smoke is coming up on there, I'm not consenting to have that in my lungs. I mean, in theory, should I be able to call the police on someone for something like that?
I don't believe that it would allow for a criminal infraction in that situation, since that's going to be inside of a private establishment.
Hmm.
But it does specifically prohibit any kind of smoking in a public place.
Boy, that's interesting. Like, an interesting question. I can see that they're actually very divided over there in the comments. Make sure you drop yours over on whichever live stream network you're watching us on this morning, and smash that like button if you like the conversation. I'm speaking to the number one top most liberty leaning legislator here in the state of Missouri, State Representative Tony Lovasco. Give him a round of applause by clicking that like button. The studio audience can cheer, sure, but I have no idea whether or not you're enjoying the content that you like unless you click that like button and drop a comment and let us know what you think about the topics that we're discussing today. All right. Well, the big question here, the transgender pushback in the state of Missouri. The Missouri Attorney General issued a rule that would emergency stay against operations for transgender sex change operations, and partially it included adults. Your thoughts on this, Tony?
So the adults thing is a little bit concerning. I haven't read the specific order, but I do think that there is definitely a compelling government interest in making sure that children are safe and protected from life-altering procedures. Adults is a different matter. I do think that there is a freedom to make poor decisions with your body if you're so inclined once you reach of age. But no, I support the concept of making sure that until the legislature acts when it comes to children, that something is put in place to stop things from continuing.
People like rabid social cons like Matt Walsh and others have said that they think that it should be banned for adults because you're essentially butchering people who have a mental illness, and if you accept the fact that a certain amount of people do have a mental illness, Tony, then I mean he makes a point in the sense that let's say somebody is in prison, for example, and they're in a mental institution and they decide that they want a sex change operation. We might say, hey, probably not a good idea for us to do that because in some sense, you're kind of taking advantage of people who are mentally disabled to an extent, Tony.
Well, if somebody is in a mental institution, I think that that's a fair argument because they're in custody at that point. Whether it's voluntary or not, there's a certain amount of decision making that's being done for them on their behalf. That's not true of folks, just everyday folks. These are the same arguments that we hear the left using when it comes to red flag laws,
Mm.
that someone ought to be making some kind of completely subjective determination as to whether or not someone is a danger to themselves or others, and based on that is going to deprive them of their rights because we think they might do something harmful. That's not good policy whatsoever.
Fed Up Kentuckian over on Rumble has a really good comment here. He says people wanting weight loss surgery have to have at least one psych consultant pass to get it. Probably a good idea for gender transition surgery, would you say?
I don't necessarily have a problem with industry standards to decide what's best practice. I
Mhm.
certainly think that most physicians, that are credible ones at least,
Mhm.
are going to be making sure that their patients are capable of making a good decisions before they do something that's going to be permanent. That being said, I don't know necessarily it's something that we need to be legislating.
Can I ask you, because yesterday this Facebook page called like the Skeptical Libertarian was out there attacking people like yourself and myself who believe that gender transition surgery for children should be banned, and that it's enough, and that probably children should not be at pride parades where people are swinging their wing wangs and their banana hammocks out in public, right? Calling us right wing culture warriors, which I guess guilty of charge. But I guess my question is, Tony, on the cultural question here for like how we should protect kids, like why do you think that there is this leftist push to include things in drag shows, drag queen story hour for kids, and this desire to transition children and things like this? It is the slippery slope that the moral majority warned us about in the 1980s, where people like you and I would probably have poo-pooed it at the time.
Yeah, I think honestly there's going to be a push on both sides of the aisle to just kind of normalize whatever it is that the values that particular group is standing for. And I think we're seeing that the left is very clear about what they stand for. In recent months and years, the idea that things that are decisions that adults should be free to make is not necessarily the same discussion as what's valuable and good, right? There's a lot of things that I support that should be legal that I don't necessarily agree with or would participate in myself. A lot of times there's folks on both sides of the aisle. The right does this on our issues as well.
Mhm.
There's this propensity to assume that because you think something is valuable or good, well, that it ought to be normalized and you ought to have a right to live in a society where the way that you view the world is the average thing that is out there. And that's not the case. The reality is you should not be subjecting your values on young children that cannot consent or comprehend to what it is that you're pushing on them.
Yeah, this is what the Facebook page posted yesterday. They said the question, why would drag queens want to be around children, is incredibly inappropriate and misguided, suggesting that the only reason an adult would want to spend time with children is for inappropriate reasons is a deeply troubling assumption, and it says a lot more about the character of the person asking than it does the drag queen. See, yeah. So I feel your face just explained how I feel.
Yeah, well, so to me that's a perfect example, which is there's a massive distinction between someone who works as a drag performer
Mhm.
spending time with kids in their own personal capacity as a human being. Yeah, if I was against that, I probably wouldn't be the greatest person.
Right.
That's a huge difference from saying that somebody in costume doing a performance, adult themed, sexually themed performances, doing that in front of children.
Have you ever?
Like, there's a massive distinction. The fact that they're conflating the two is just insane.
I hate to ask you this kind of a personal question on the spot, Tony. You don't have to answer. Have you ever been to a drag show?
I have not.
You've never been to a drag
I have
show.
not.
That's interesting.
Well, I'll say I had a 9-hour hearing though. I actually interacted with quite a few folks in that profession, and I got to tell you, I was actually pretty impressed with the number of drag queens that came and testified that were professional. They seemed like normal business people that had their gig. They had their get up. It was a little strange, I will admit.
Okay.
But the reality is there is the ability, of making that line between, look, you're in character and you're not, and we need to make that distinction about what's appropriate around kids and what's not.
Well, I have lived in New York City and Washington, D.C., and my background is in the entertainment business. So, what do you think the answer to the question is for me? That have I been? I majored in musical theater. You think I've been to a drag show once or twice? Tony, I've been to a drag show or two, and they are always sexual. They are never not sexual. I've never been to a drag show where I thought to myself, this is something I really think I'd like to show to my kids one day, or I would love to take my 5-year-old son to something like this, or I've never been at a drag show where I was like, what a family friendly event, right? And even like put the question aside about the potential for drugs and alcohol to be at places like this, because of course there always are drugs and alcohol at places like this, but there's always what do you call it? What was the website, Stephanie? Meatspin.com. There's always a meat spin going on in a banana hammock somewhere, and whether or not that person is clothed or not, it's entirely inappropriate for children to be at something like that. And I can't imagine a scenario where it would be appropriate to bring children to something like that, because here's the thing: it is an inherently sexual act, in my opinion. It is an inherently sexual performance, a highly sexualized performance for people who unfortunately seem to define themselves only entirely through their sexual lifestyle rather than through any kind of other, meaningful accomplishments for themselves. Not to say that, there's anything wrong with that. Everybody gets to live their life as they see fit. But I mean, if someone who defines themselves, their entire identity is wrapped up in their sexuality, Tony, is that somebody you want to drop your kids off with after school?
No, and I think it's interesting that there's so much pushback on that particular area because there's so many other aspects of being an adult that are not appropriate for children that we don't really think twice of. Most people would not take their kids to a comedy club,
Right.
right? Or obviously bars, that sort of thing. This is a very extreme example of something that people don't normally think that much about. We usually have to have long drawn out debates with people about what's appropriate for children and what's not, because it's usually pretty obvious.
Yeah.
There's edge cases, of course, but the fact that for some reason all of a sudden we're all just terrible bigots because we're drawing the line here, which is not a particularly bold leap in my mind.
I think Fed Up Kentuckian makes a really good point here over on Rumble. He says, I just think the wrong argument is being had about the drag situation. The argument should be what is best for the child. The very nature of drag queens is inherently adult-natured entertainment. So I guess that is a good point to extend if you think about it, Tony. Why is it that we have to make a consideration for the adults who wants to be around the child? Shouldn't the priority be for the child?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and their well-being?
And certainly when you're legislating, that's exactly how you have to do it.
That's an interesting point. What do you think about what Tony's saying this morning? Smash that like button if you're appreciating it so far. Studio audience likes it. Great. I'd love to hear what you think. But the only way I can find out is if you write a comment wherever you're joining us today, whether it's on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, somewhere else, and somewhere else, and somewhere else, and wherever we're not banned, and click like on that button over there that we're able to find out how you feel about the content that you're watching this morning. Tony, you're a busy guy. I know that you have got to go to your committee hearings today. You're a legislator. You're a very serious person, Tony. But you're talking about your bills that you're trying to advance here in the state of Missouri to advance the concept of liberty, and you say they're a little bit all over the place. What's going on, Tony? And give us a little bit of a legislative report before we let you go.
Sure. The reality is most bills don't become law. And the ones that do don't usually become law on their own. The unfortunate part of our system is that usually you have your bill, your ideas kind of vetted through the process, and then towards the end of the year, they kind of get mingled together with other bills. These omnibus pieces of legislation get crafted. It's really not a great way to do business, but it is the reality of the process and unfortunately how it works. I've got little bits of pieces of legislation and bills of mine floating around on all kinds of different vehicles. We've got about 7-8 days left in session now, so it's coming down to the wire as to whether or not something makes it over to the governor's desk. But I could have a really great year or a completely worthless year. And it's going to be determined in a few days.
Right. If you could have absolutely one thing, Tony, just one thing pass of your legislation this year, what's the top priority, you would say?
Well, I would say the stuff that's still floating out there, I would say the Building Permit Reform Act. That's something I've been working on for several months now. Just kind of basic common sense stuff when it comes to doing work on your own home and not being hassled by government. So it's not very controversial, so I got a real shot at that one this year, but probably my top one this of what's left on the horizon.
There you go. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go, Tony?
Well, it's always good to talk about brass knuckles, right?
That's right.
You teased it in the intro. I do have that brass knuckles decriminalization attached to a couple different vehicles, so we'll see. We might get that this year too.
Yeah, all my brass knuckles identify as paperweights. Tony Lovasco, Missouri State Representative. Thank you, Sarah, so much for coming on the show today. And thanks for defending freedom. Follow Tony at Tony Lovasco on Twitter. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, awesome.
Have a good one. All right, when we get back, what's going to happen next? Who knows? It's the Wake Up America show. Anything could happen. At 7:51, I've got, oh yeah, the TJ Maxx story. Did you see this video of this guy put the beat down on that lady who was trying to steal from TJ Maxx? I say let him fight. I'll play that clip and we'll talk about it when we get back. That's racist. I'll tell you what. When we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Bye, Tony.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, you know, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, you know, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Did you like Tony Lovasco? Good. Well, he's not as cute as my next guest, the lovely Steffi P, sticking around with us this morning.
Back.
For just a few more minutes, we've got the lovely Stephanie Peterson.
And I'm definitely pro-chicken.
Tell me about your pro-chicken stance, Stephanie.
Well, when I used to live in Michigan, I lived in the suburbs, and we were not allowed to have chickens. And so I was trying really hard to find a house in an area where you could have chickens. So it was definitely a big issue out there. And now that we moved to our house where we are now, we're technically not allowed to have chickens, even though we have over 5 acres.
People have chickens, though, in our
I know, but apparently in the HOA guidelines.
We can have horses, but we can't have chicken. Anyways, all right, let's talk about chickens. This is a video that I saw yesterday that went viral at a TJ Maxx in Mira Loma, California, and the gentleman who is the Good Samaritan here is being called out as a racist for attempting to stop these thieves from stealing from TJ Maxx. I just showed Steffi the video for the first time. I'll get your reaction. Let's watch it real quick.
And a Good Samaritan trying to stop 2 alleged thieves at a TJ Maxx in Mira Loma. Dramatic video captured by a customer showing the takedown at the location on Limonite Avenue. At least 2 women wearing black hoodies seen trying to walk out with arms full of purses. But when the second one tried to leave, a man jumped in to stop her, tackling her, eventually knocking her to the ground.
Let me go. Let her go. Let her go. Let me go. Let me go.
He's got some restraint skills.
I got it. I know he could have just wailed on her.
Get away. It's unclear what merchandise actually was taken. So far, no arrests have been made.
It's funny. What's funny to me too is that there's like some people who are like, let her go, and like this other guy's like trying to stop him from stopping the shoplifter and stuff like that. What the hell? And of course, this is
Do you think they just didn't realize what was going on, or something?
of course they knew what was going on. And here's the headline from The Root, which is a black website. They're like, Good Samaritan in shoplifter who attacked TJ Maxx shoplifter in Cali just wanted an excuse to assault a black woman.
Oh my gosh. I don't think he's just going on the street attacking random people.
Dude, he's not, exactly. If you're a thief, you're committing violence. If somebody was stealing from us, what do you think I would do? I would beat their ass. I don't care who you are.
In terms of the law, is it okay to protect another person's private property?
Yes, it is. But this is California where the laws are backwards.
Right.
So it's quite possible that, yes, he could defend someone else's private property, but there could be a lawsuit. The thief could sue him for, like battery or whatever, and a jury.
Don't thieves sue like homeowners for them getting hurt?
Yes,
after
and when
the fact?
when they break in, it totally happens. But I mean, of course, they're trying to turn it into a racial incident. How could you tell the person was black? They had their face covered, they had a hoodie up, and all that kind of. They had a mask on, they had a hoodie on, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's like, people are like, oh, well, they're trying to say, oh, you shouldn't hit a girl and all that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, the left all of a sudden wants to have their cake and eat it too. You're a girl when you're getting punched by a man because you're stealing. There's no, but you're non-binary whenever you want to have the benefits of being a man, right?
I mean, clearly that woman was pretty rough because she was able to take what he was giving her, and she even left.
What's hilarious? Yeah, exactly. What's hilarious too is that she's like, what the, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, what the, oh, like you're so surprised. She's probably
like you're entitled to have these bags?
Yeah.
Maxxinista?
She's not a Maxxinista, but I am. Got my card right here.
Man is probably a very proud Maxxinista with his TJ Maxx card in his hand.
He doesn't want to have to pay higher prices for the breakage, for the loss that's going on in there. So anyways, I got to go because I got Judge Napolitano coming on in the next. Stephanie, thank you for coming on the show today.
So welcome.
Thanks for helping me set up all this equipment and everything so I can have a great interview with Tony Lovasco.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
I'm now a roadie.
You're a roadie. I love you very much. You're a sexy.
I just need band bus.
You're a very sexy roadie. Love you very much. I'm going to take you home later. See you. Treat you like the roadies get treated.
I'll be waiting.
Love you, Steffi. Bye. Give her a thumbs up and an applause. Thanks so much for watching the Wake Up America show. We'll be back to Judge Napolitano. I want to ask him about why the feds are arming themselves to the teeth, and about what he thinks of the CIA director being found in the flight logs with Jeffrey Epstein. It's going to be good. Don't miss it. We'll be back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back. Get out of my pocket. And let me have more control of my own destiny.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist. Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. All right, well, it's time for your favorite segment of the week. Take that dunce cap off and put on your big brain. It's time for Judge Andrew Napolitano, the host of the Judging Freedom podcast and the leading light in the fight for freedom here in the United States
Cantina
today.
Group. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, and I just want to say
doesn't say much for my life, but the happiest time of the week is right now.
Well, certainly, Judge, we've got a lot of fans of the Wake Up America show, and they look forward to your appearances every week because we talk about the stuff that really matters, the big issues, and then we like to take it even into bigger discussions about the ideas, not just the people. And Judge, I'm excited to talk to you about the next couple of topics that our listeners, I think, will find most interesting. One, this question asked over at Reason Magazine, why do the federal bureaucrats need so much firepower? A new report details a startling trend. Federal agencies with no obvious law enforcement purview are spending millions each year on guns and ammunition. Judge, why?
Well, why? Because they can, because the tendency of government is to expand and engage in aggression. Perhaps the Supreme Court's enlightened recent readings on the Second Amendment have scared the government into thinking that it might need to suppress a rebellion. I really don't know, but why, the post office and why the FDA and why the EPA need their own little armies, it's just repellent. It's another example of Congress giving away its authority to either the president or to an administrative agency. Remember, the Constitution says no money shall be spent from the federal treasury except those which are authorized by Congress. So when Congress gives a blank check, whether it's to Joe Biden, here's $113 billion, spend it however you want on Ukraine, or to the EPA, here's $100 billion, spend it however you want, including on guns and ammo. Congress is negating its own authority under the Constitution and giving some of that authority away. It's repellent. It should be condemned. It should be stopped. Look, in my world, there'd be no guns in the hands of anybody in the federal government. We wouldn't have a standing army. That's not authorized under the Constitution. The FBI is not authorized under the Constitution. Only 2 criminal statutes are authorized under the Constitution: treason and debasing the money supply. All other crimes would be prosecuted at the state level, as they were until 1870, when the Justice Department was formed. Anybody that doesn't follow Jefferson's warning that in the long march of history, government expands and liberty shrinks, is now seeing that right before their eyes. Government not only expands, it becomes potentially violent and prepares to engage in aggression against whom? Against the American public. The DHS and the FDA are not carrying their guns to shoot at Chinese balloons. They're carrying their guns to shoot at Americans who might want to be asserting their First Amendment right to learn about the government, expose the government, and criticize it.
Judge, correct me if I'm wrong here, but because your constitutional knowledge, of course, is far greater than mine. But isn't in terms of a standing army, that would imply the army itself? But you did mention Thomas Jefferson, who built the first modern navy of his time. Is it the U.S.? Isn't the U.S. Navy, and by extension the U.S. Marines, being a part of the Navy? Isn't it constitutional for us to have a navy?
Well, the Constitution does mention a navy. The Marines, of course, are part of the Navy. Madison's intent was that the military would only exist for 2 years and then they'd go home, so we wouldn't have a standing military. And of course, we didn't have a standing military until after World War II, which we filled the military with draftees. The government manipulated the Japanese into bombing Pearl Harbor so that FDR could get us out of a depression by putting a few million guys to work, killing Germans and killing Japanese. There's no reason to get into all of that now, but that's the history of the standing army. And then since World War II, and the Red Scares, we've always had a standing army for fear that, we wake up someday on the Jersey shore and there is the Russian Navy ready to take over New Jersey. I mean, it's basically what the fear was in the late 40s and early 50s when all of this stuff became what it is. Add to that Truman signing the National Security Act of 1947, which created the secret army called the CIA. And then just multiply that out with the intelligence community gathering dirt on members of Congress to assure that they will continue to vote budgetary increases for the intelligence community. And that's where we are today. The government spies, the government lies, the government kills. And when some courageous 21-year-old part-time National Guardsman exposes this, the government wants to lock him up and throw away the key. Why? Because the government was embarrassed that he revealed the truth.
Judge, because we like to dwell in the realm of the theoretical here and ask questions that no one else in the media is talking about, then I'd like to expand on this theory of the role of the United States military, specifically in regards to the protection of American merchant shipping. I guess my question for you, Judge, would be, in order for us to be able to engage in free trade, in order for us to be able to maintain shipping lanes in areas of the world where there is extreme danger, would your hope, would your expectation be for a libertarian future for international corporations to build their own and maintain their own private armies rather than a single U.S. army that guides and protects the system of international free trade that we all currently enjoy at this point? Would you rather have Blackwater or new mercenary institutions spring up? Elon Musk have his own private army. Governor Ron DeSantis, for his private guard, Donald Trump to have his own private army. Doesn't that create its own system of issues and problems in terms of jurisdiction?
Sure it does. Sure it does. But nothing is efficient when the government runs it and the government monopolizes it. I would rather pay an insurance company to keep me safe than to pay the enormous taxes I have to pay here in New Jersey for police to arrive after the crime is committed. I mean, the whole concept of let's put all of our money and all of our liberty in one pot and entrust it to the government is demonstrably false and utterly inefficient and ineffective and does nothing but grow the government.
But what about the
Example, what we
jurisdiction
started
problem?
discussing.
But what about the jurisdiction problem, Judge? If Donald Trump has his own private army, say, and for his Trump corporation, and Judge Napolitano pays an insurance company for his own private army, what happens when those two armies clash and we have a dispute over property rights? Whose jurisdiction takes precedence?
Well, I can't answer that. I don't know what the answer to that would be. It would probably be worked out because you're talking about private funds being expended. When it's government money, nobody cares how much of it is wasted. Nobody cares how many people are killed because the government acts with impunity. Presumably, if Trump and to continue your analogy, and his army trespassed on my property or seized my property, there'd be some redress for that. But when the government comes on my property, there is no redress.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my concern would be whoever had the larger private army would be the one that would prevail ultimately, and that I guess the democratic system that we've created gives us all a portion of buy-in into this system that we have right now. Our enfranchisement, our ability to vote for our representatives, at least puts us on somewhat of even terms, in jury trials and questions of justice, that at least to some extent, not with the perverted system, of course, that we have right now, but the theory is that, having at least somewhat of an equal jurisdiction, that our private mercenary armies would, not be at want to go to war with one another. But I realize we're dwelling now in, maximal libertarian utopian theories that aren't quite in basis in reality. And we're talking about,
Right.
economic theories that
Right.
we couldn't put in
But
place.
we started this conversation with addressing a very serious problem.
Right.
And that is the militarization of non-law enforcement aspects of the federal government. From there, we leapt to my argument that the federal government should have nothing to do with law enforcement except for treason and debasing the money supply. My article this week, does government believe in the Constitution? The answer is no. Government does not believe in the Constitution. Government believes the Constitution is an obstacle, and it will do what it can to avoid and evade that obstacle, like buying in secret guns and ammo and putting guns in the pockets and on the hip and the pocketbook and the front seat of the car of people who have nothing whatsoever to do with law enforcement. The IRS comes to your house and the guy's carrying a gun. Close the door, call the local police and say, there's a stranger in my front yard and he's got a gun. You'll get a good response.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson, and I'm speaking to one of my greatest inspirations, a leading figure in the fight for liberty, individual liberty in the United States, Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's also the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which is a hugely successful podcast you can download on any of your mobile devices. We're always thankful that he gives his time so graciously here with us every Wednesday morning at this time period. So make sure you set an appointment if you like our conversations to come back every week at this time. Judge, I'd like to switch topics for just a moment and ask you what your response was to the news that the director of the CIA had a private meeting with the disgraced financier, Jeffrey Epstein.
It's a head scratcher, and I can't figure it out. I mean, Epstein was notorious for providing underage or involuntarily offered young ladies for sexual liaisons on this island that he owned. I don't know if that is the reason that Bill Burns was there. Bill Burns is a former State Department official who now is the director of the CIA. He was not the director of the CIA at the time he met with Epstein. You know, Epstein's tentacles were everywhere, including the millions he gave to his alma mater, Harvard University. What these people were doing with him, it's hard to believe that they didn't know what he was up to, and I don't know what they're doing there. The president of Bard College, Leon Botstein, a very highly respected academic and college president, says he was trying to get contributions to the college out of Epstein. You know, Epstein did donate a lot of money to universities, but if there's anything else involved, I mean, there's clean money and there's dirty money. I don't know how he earned his money. I don't know if he earned it by this sexual trade that he was involved in, but it's a head scratcher to me. If I were Joe Biden, I'd be asking Bill Burns, what the hell were you doing there? I don't know that Biden is the type to do that.
Yeah, the concern on my part, Judge, is that the officials of our government and of the major corporation, Goldman Sachs, bankers and lawyers, the people, you know, the list of names that flew on that plane with Jeffrey Epstein to and met with him on that island. I mean, it's a mile long, Judge. I saw Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for example, was listed on the flight logs with Jeffrey Epstein, which is not to say or to accuse them of anything, but we've all read what went on those airlines. I mean, Judge, you and I, we aren't stupid, right? You know, you and I, we've run in very elite circles, and when you hang out with somebody who has a little creepy air to them, and you see a lot of young girls running around, you know, questions must be asked. I mean, it's not really a stretch of the imagination to say that Alex Jones was largely right when he said we're being run by an elite cabal of international pedophiles.
Well, it may very well be the case. I mean, maybe the House Judiciary Committee will summon the director of the CIA and ask him under oath, what the hell were you doing there? And, or I suppose the Senate should do it, because the Senate did not know about this, obviously, at the time they confirmed him to run the CIA. Look, there's so much going on with the government that we don't know about. It's wildly corrupt. It's grossly inefficient. It fails to do what we've hired it to do, which is preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. The purpose of the Constitution is twofold: establish the federal government and limit it. We now have limitless government. The Constitution is an utter failure at limiting the government. Only nullification and secession will limit the feds. Secession.
Secession, not succession. Correct. Yes,
Right.
That's right.
Right. Look, when the Constitution was ratified, it says it'll take 9 states for this thing to become official. There were 13. 5 of them said, we're only going to ratify this if you add a Bill of Rights. If you don't add a Bill of Rights, we're going to secede. That's how commonly understood was the concept of secession in 1789, whereupon Madison and Company wrote the Bill of Rights, and it sat and was ratified quickly, and it satisfied those 5 states. Okay, they're not going to leave. We still have a country. Oh, you mean they can leave peacefully, Abe Lincoln? Yeah, they can leave peacefully.
Yeah, I remember that Abraham Lincoln said at the beginning of the war that he would vote to keep slavery legal for all time if the states would remain in the Union. Judge, can I ask you something? And I've never been much of a conspiracy theorist as we sort of know it, because I tend to believe that government is more incompetent than capable in terms of pulling off mass plots, although there absolutely have been conspiracies throughout time, ones that have been proven, you know, plots, conspiracies to assassinate George Washington. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln was a conspiracy, right? But in regards to the death of Jeffrey Epstein, I believe that he was murdered. Do you?
Yes. Yes, and my belief is based on an interview that I had with Michael Baden, Dr. Michael Baden, who was the foremost pathologist, forensic pathologist, meaning one who examines dead bodies and then testifies about it. I first met Dr. Baden when he testified in front of me in my courtroom in New Jersey when I was on the bench. And Dr. Baden is absolutely convinced that that Epstein was murdered. Bill Barr, the Attorney General, covered it up. They ended up disciplining 2 low-level security guards. I think they took 2 weeks' pay away from them. But there's a murderer there, and nobody was prosecuted, and the government probably knows who it was. Why was he murdered? Because of the little black book, because there's probably other names in there. Look, Bill Clinton was on that island. Bill Clinton was on that plane. Donald Trump was on that island, depending upon how far back you want to go. Doesn't mean they were committing crimes, but it does mean they are not blind and could see what was going on there.
Well, it's interesting because, a lot of the accusations leveled against Vladimir Putin, that he murders journalists and reporters, that he, clamps down on free speech and things like that, it's not, which I'm not using this as an excuse for him whatsoever, but it's a little naive to assume that things like that don't happen here in the United States. Wouldn't you say, Judge?
Agreed. Speaking of Vladimir Putin, the New York Times is reporting that he survived an assassination attempt.
Really?
This morning in Moscow. It sounds like it was a very crude attempt. It was 2 drones aimed at the Kremlin. The Kremlin, as you know, is about a dozen buildings in Moscow, in one of which Vladimir Putin has an official residence. He doesn't usually live there, and he wasn't there at the time. We'll see if the story can be corroborated, but it just broke. Everybody's running with it now. The New York Times, Fox News, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal.
I'm reading this now. Kremlin says Ukraine sent 2 drones to attack Vladimir Putin. Perfectly legitimate for Ukraine to do so. I mean, they are in a state of war. Don't you just wish that sometimes the leaders would just go into the middle of a field somewhere and just kill each other instead of dragging the rest of us into it?
I wish they would go to Geneva and talk about ending the war and talk about a ceasefire. You know why there's no ceasefire? Because Joe Biden and the globalists in the State Department, like Victoria Nuland and Tony Blinken, they don't want a ceasefire because it will make their plans to oust Vladimir Putin from office an abject failure.
Judge, you use that word globalists. I'd like to have you expand on that for just a moment, because before the word globalist sort of became synonymous with international government, it was a term that was coined by economists to mean international free trade, which is something, you and I have say support. I want to put words in your mouth. But I mean, the populist movement of today, which uses that rhetoric that you just used as well, they are not believers in international free trade. These
Right.
are people who believe in restrictions on trade, the restrictions on immigration. So when you say the word globalist, right, my initial response is to sort of blink, because I think to myself, this is a term that used to mean international liberalism, meaning limited
Yeah.
government.
Yeah,
But
it's not the
your thoughts?
right phrase. I should have called it empire builders.
Mm. But isn't
Yeah.
that fascinating though, Judge, though, that we do have this kind of like this, the word, it has started to change meaning as it's become in more common use by the right. Globalist has become a negative word to mean international government, but it
Right.
means something else to you and I, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Well, just like we used to be called liberals, classical liberals, and then the liberals took that phrase from us and called themselves liberals and called themselves progressives, and Orwell predicted that words would change meaning with the passage of time. Some of the real sort of old fart libertarians still call themselves classical liberals, but if you say that today, nobody will know what you're talking about.
Right. They'll think that you're some pink-haired communist or something like that, right? But
Right.
but
Right.
but it is
But
fascinating,
my
Judge, because
condemnation,
Go ahead.
my condemnation of the State Department is of the attitude of American exceptionalism, that America and Americans are better human beings than the rest of the world, and we can tell the rest of the world how to live. George W. Bush, Joe Biden. a resistor to the concept of American exceptionalism, believe it or not, Donald Trump, who was willing to take on the entire Republican establishment over this issue. You know, in the past 24 hours, Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell have pledged undying support to Ukraine, no matter what it costs. What does the Republican Party stand for? If Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump become the nominee and get elected, you have an issue there. You have a president who says this is none of our business, and a Congress that says we want war, because we really have one party in Congress, the war party.
I'm speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano at the moment, and I'm excited to have him here for just a couple more minutes. Judge, can we finish this conversation by discussing a little bit more about the sort of the ideological shift on the right in terms of the major governing philosophies? You know, in the 1990s, when Congressman Ron Paul and Murray Rothbard and Lou Rockwell and many others were building associations with what they called, you know, the redneck strategy or the paleo strategy, as they will, they were very much in agreement. Murray Rothbard was very much in agreement with Pat Buchanan's view of politics. And part of it was because, you know, in opposition to the neoconservative establishment at the time, the internationalists, the warmongers, the people who advocated for endless war, right? The Leon Trotskys and well, I guess they were Trotskyites, former Trotskyites, but also Straussians and things like that. Their view, of course, was in opposition to the libertarian view, but the libertarian view was not the same as the paleo view. Now, the paleo conservatives, and I apologize for those who are tuning in right now who are like, what are these words that are using? This is very much insider news, big brain stuff. But these are the conversations that need to be had that are really about ideas. And Judge, I'm really curious your thoughts about this. The Pat Buchananites, the paleos, the redneck strategy, if you will, it was successful. And we see it today in the modern MAGA movement, where the establishment of the Republican Party, if you would call it a Trumpian establishment, not to say that Trump is a paleo, I don't think he, you know, understands many of these words that you and I can share here, right, with our own sort of secret language and code that you and I can talk in. Right, but you know, you're understanding every word that I'm saying here, right? Because what we find ourselves in, Judge, is an interesting ideological scenario where the neoconservatives removed from power are in a situation where now they are kissing cousins to libertarians, where the neocons now look at us and say, hey, well, you might not agree with us when it comes to foreign policy, but we agree with you on, you know, they're essentially former liberals, Judge, the Straussians, the Bushies, the Romneys, right? They're social liberals, many of them, not social conservatives, in that they believe in things like perhaps gay marriage, if you will, or libertarian social values. They believe in international free trade. Many of the neocons are believers in international free trade as we are, which puts us in opposition, us and them, in opposition to the MAGA Republicans, the establishment now, who are against international free trade, against immigration, against many libertarian principles. It's sort of it was an enemy of my enemy is my friend scenario in the 1990s with Rothbard and Ron Paul and Mises and Rockwell and Pat Buchanan. And now we're in a different ideological scenario, Judge, where now the paleos have power, and they are advocating very much for the progressive Theodore Roosevelt Republican ideals that you and I are very much opposed to. It's a very strange, mixed up world that we find ourselves in, Judge. How can we navigate these dark waters?
I guess we can navigate these dark waters by continuing to preach the message of freedom. You know, Pat Buchanan, who I'm sure is against our involvement in Ukraine, is in favor of tariffs and is in favor of the micromanagement of the economy. That doesn't bring about freedom. Only free trade will liberate everybody. Only your right to engage in commercial intercourse with whomever you want at whatever price the two of you agree on will bring about true prosperity. But when the government micromanages the economy, and when the government engages in non-defensive wars, it saps liberty and it wastes assets. Where do those assets come from? Well, the government is bankrupt, so it just keeps borrowing against the future. So your grandchildren will be paying interest on the money that Joe Biden is borrowing today so he can spend tomorrow. And that's with the approval of the neocons. So they're not consistent in their love for liberty. The neocons love a war and want free trade. The Pat Buchananites don't love war, but don't want free trade. As far as I'm concerned, the anarchists or the minarchists or the Hans Hermann Hoppe democracy, the failed libertarians are the only ones who are consistent in their embrace of human freedom. And that human freedom is an extension of your natural rights.
Oh, Judge, these are such good conversations. I could have them for hours, but I just can't. I've got to go. Judge, please tell us where we can find out more about your podcast and who you're interviewing for your next exciting episode.
Well, before this week is out, we're interviewing Scott Ritter from Moscow, which is where he is this week. He doesn't mind me saying it. Colonel Doug McGregor is off this week. God bless him. He's entitled to a rest every once in a while. Larry Johnson will be on with us later today on this assassination attempt. And Scott Horton of antiwar.com, one of the greatest defenders of peace and adversaries of a standing army, will be on with us as well. Judging Freedom on YouTube. Last week we had 2.5 million views. It's mind-boggling, Austin. Wow. Mind-boggling. I have to credit it to the quality of the guests and the news cycle that is producing us, because a lot of mainstream media doesn't want to explore the version of events that you and I happily explore on our shows.
We certainly do, Judge. 2 million views. Wow, your voice more powerful than ever, it seems. The host of the Judging Freedom podcast and one of my greatest inspirations, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Thank you for your time today, friend.
Thank you, Austin. God love you. All the best.
Thank you very much. What did you think of Judge Napolitano? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. All right, I'm going to go get Daniela Pensek. I promise I will not take a very long commercial break. I just got to go get Daniela. I'm running late with her because we were having such a good conversation with the judge. Let me go get her to talk about the guy who pooped on the pride flag in New York City. All right, we're going to take it down a couple of notches. Not to say that it's dumb. It's not a dumb conversation. It's just not quite as big brain. But all right, Austin, shut up. Go to break. Get Daniela. Be right back. It's the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Donald Trump and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Step right up, ladies and gents, to learn about the coolest president yet. He's not just any old prez, he's Calvin Coolidge, and boy oh boy is he different from the rest. He was quiet as a mouse, but don't you underestimate his power. He knew how to handle money, and he didn't waste an hour. He cut taxes, lowered debt, and balanced the budget with ease. No wonder the Roaring Twenties brought such prosperity and peace. But don't take my word for it. Grab a copy of Calvin the Coolest President and see for yourself. It's a children's book that'll make you smile and help your little ones learn about wealth. You can find it on Amazon Kindle or get your hands on a paperback at apforlibertyshop.com. So come on down and get yourself a copy of the book that's making waves all around town. You won't regret it, so get ready to be floored, because Calvin Coolidge, well, folks, he really scored.
I'm a public defender. I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at Wake Up America Show. Whew, how was that interview with the judge? Jeez. My brain is feeling drained, I'll tell you. I think I got a little bit more left in me, though. Speaking of drained, apparently there's a new brown stripe on the pride flag. What could that mean? Joining us now to discuss is the lovely Daniela Pensack, all the way from the great state of Washington. Good morning, Daniela. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to
How are
have
you
you
doing
here.
today?
Oh, doing well, Daniela. You are a Turning Point USA, I guess, would you say ambassador? I know. What is your formal title over there at TPUSA?
Uh, yeah, I'm not quite popular enough to be an ambassador, but I am actually a field representative. So I work for the high school department. So I try to get basically I try to get high schoolers to start chapters on their school campuses.
Gotcha. Well, we
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time and getting up so early on the West Coast to join us over here, Daniela. So I stole that joke about the brown stripe on the pride flag from Studio 314, so I want to give him a little bit of credit over there, Studio. Stole your joke, but I did give you credit. What is this story about New York? Apparently some guy being investigated for a hate crime. What's happening?
Yeah, so what seems to be the case is that a homeless man basically defecated on not just one, but two pride flags from, I guess it was like a restaurant slash bar in New York City. And this is like apparently a very progressive restaurant. They had all kinds of these, pride flags around. And anyway, this man had defecated on it. Clearly this man was, I seen like the surveillance footage of him. He's clearly homeless, down on his luck, probably mentally unstable. But it apparently authorities are trying on a manhunt for him, and they want to charge him with a hate crime. And I just kind of want to say what everyone's thinking and what has already been mentioned on the show is that, what would have happened if this was the American flag? I think he would have been let off easy on this one. So yeah, and that's kind of what's the situation, and it's quite humorous.
I mean, there's certainly a sensitivity out of the LGBT left movement these days. But in regards to a hate crime for pride, there was like a similar incident where I don't know where this happened, but some gentleman had like he drove his truck, he like burned his tires out of his truck on something. It's something similar, wasn't it?
Yes, I do recall that video like floating around on Twitter and all that. I thought it was actually kind of funny. And plus like if you're gonna put a like anything on the road, I just don't I mean, what do you expect? That stuff's just gonna happen naturally anyway. The only issue I have with the pride flag defecation story is that, though at the worst, this man should be charged with maybe like defacing someone's private property because it wasn't his flag. But as far as a hate crime goes, that I just think that's going a step too far, especially, on a clearly unstable, unwell, homeless guy. I mean,
Yeah.
there yeah.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to Daniela Pensack. She is a field coordinator for Turning Point USA. Speaking of flags, though, I saw this other story you sent me yesterday, Daniela, and kudos to you for being on top of the news. I hadn't seen it until you sent it. People standing for national anthem horrifies progressives in viral video. Quote, a dangerous situation. What is this story?
Yeah, so for that story, someone ta filmed like a group of people. I think it was in a cafe or restaurant standing to say the national anthem or like the Pledge of Allegiance. And so they posted it on TikTok and said, as well as if you read the comments under the video, that people were stating that they were afraid of what they're seeing, and and how this is a major problem, hashtag white people things. And the person who posted the video said that they felt like they were in danger. And this is kind of like the current state of Generation Z right now. It's just a little bit fragile and what's happening, but I mean, can any of us be surprised? Any sign of patriotism now is considered, well, I mean, like essentially they think it's like fascism at this point. And I'm kind of quite concerned about the direction of the country if this is what is considered now dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of fascism, another story you brought to my mention here: Pornhub blocks access to their site from Utah in response to age verification law. What is this?
Yeah, so that story is really interesting. So Utah issued this So they enacted this law which states that if you want to access adult sites, pornography sites, you have to verify your ID. And you have to verify your identification, use your ID to access that, and so they could protect children from accessing those sites. And as a response, I think Pornhub, they ceased business there in Utah. And I think that's kind of a foolish decision. They're part of they're just going to slow traffic to their website, but that's their choice. But as far as Utah goes, and with a state that majority of their legislators are Mormons, even the governor of Utah had stated that pornography was a public health crisis in that state. I'm not surprised that this law was passed. And that kind of introduces the conversation of at what point do we stop. As far as this law goes, I think maybe it's a little annoying. But I do think maybe it's necessary for Utah, to protect kids. I don't want kids accessing pornography sites. Obviously, I don't think anyone here wants that. But it kind of brings into question, like, where is it, like, is this kind of like a slippery slope in the future for surveilling and allowing access to other sites, social media sites? I mean, TikTok is a big one now, and there's a national conversation about whether that should be accessible. And that's kind of the aspect of it that I'm concerned about. So yeah, I don't know if this could be leading to other problems or not.
Well, let's talk about this for a few minutes. I mean, you've described yourself sort of as an ideological libertarian, before on this show. So I'll kind of run under that assumption, unless you've changed your mind. Let me know. But in regards to let's take the children out of this equation and say here what we're really talking about is consenting adults. Because in regards to something being a public health crisis, whenever politicians fling out the public health crisis and stuff, I mean, like, speaking of pornography, wank, wank, I don't listen to them, and I have very little, I take very little credence when politicians or people who work tangentially in politics claim that something is a public health crisis. Because whether it's, it used to be every 10 years we had a new public health crisis. Now it seems, then it was every 5 years, now it's 2 years, and now it's every 6 months. And it seems to me very much to be media driven. And which is not to say that pornography can't be harmful to some people, just like cigarettes or alcohol, or drugs like fentanyl or methamphetamines or things like that, crack cocaine. Things absolutely, vices can absolutely be harmful to people. But I don't necessarily buy into the social conservative view that pornography is one of the greatest public health crises of our time. To me, it probably stretches the fact that a lot of people are bored in their marriages, and they're jealous of their husbands looking at pornography online. And consenting adults should be allowed to do what consenting adults should do. I guess my question is to you is, in regards to consenting adults, I mean, do you buy into the conservative rhetoric that it is a public health crisis?
Oh, absolutely not. That's just kind of the example I said, is like why I'm not surprised that this happened in Utah. But no, absolutely, I don't think it's a public health crisis in any state. Well, I don't know about Utah. I know that, like, Salt Lake City has apparently one of the most active clubbing and party scenes. So who knows? Maybe they do have a problem with vices. Surprisingly, like, one of the most religious states. But no, obviously that's just like rhetoric that they're employing just to get this passed. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's a problem.
Is it
I don't
cheating?
know.
Do you agree with what a lot of like right wing social conservatives say? Like, do you think that that's cheating in a relationship?
To watch pornography?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell people what they can or cannot do in their relationship. If that's something that both of those consenting adults feel like spices up their relationship, they should be able to watch pornography. I'm not going to make any moral declarations on whether or not it's right, but I just think that if that's what the adults want to do, that's perfectly fine.
Sure, but do you personally think it's cheating?
You know what? I've never been in a situation. I never, like, encountered that situation. So I can't say if I don't know, like, if it, if that's just something that I can't, I'm not sure. I can't give you, I can't tell you when I encountered that situation. I just haven't yet. So
I think this might be the first time I've been able to make you blush on this show. If you're just tuning in, I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show. My guest right now is Daniela Pensack. She's a field coordinator for Turning Point USA, talking a little bit about Utah and Pornhub choosing to self-censor themselves out in Utah. Let's move on to one last topic here, Daniela. Daniela, that you brought to my attention, which is the death penalty in the state of Florida being brought up for pedophiles. Now, Ron DeSantis is obviously running for president of the United States, not officially, but unofficially, which a lot of people could accuse this of sort of being a big campaign thing, because we're all sort of the biggest public health crisis right now is the fear of the pedophiles. But DeSantis signs what he calls new law and order bills that allows the death penalty for pedophiles. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so this was part of like a package deal of bills that basically heighten certain punishments for certain crimes. And the one that got the most stir is one of the bills that discusses pedophiles. And so what it actually says is that anyone who commits a sexual battery against a child under the age of 12 will get the death penalty. Now, I think we kind of all agree that pedophiles are terrible, and I think we all want to see them die. You know, it's so I am kind of split on the issue, but on my stance on the death penalty, I just am not I do have the unpopular opinion as a libertarian that I think the death penalty should still exist for certain egregious crimes. Maybe that should carry over to pedophiles, but that just kind of, we need to be careful about how far that is going to extend to. I've seen on Twitter a lot of conservatives talking about this, and then I've seen a lot of people actually mention that we should now carry that over to people involved in the drug trade or the fentanyl crisis, because one of the bills that Ron DeSantis signed would heighten punishments for people involved in the fentanyl drug trade. And so and I don't know, I really don't believe that we should kill people, or the state should kill people involved with the drug trade. I really don't. So I think, this is again just opening doors to other. I don't know if this is the right way to go about it. Maybe castration would be a very good way to respond to the pedophile issue. But again, I can see what he's doing, and I think as much as everyone, I hate pedophiles as much as the next guy, but you gotta be wary about what else is this going to lead to, and that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, for sure. I don't like any expansion of the death penalty. It's not to say that I don't think that pedophiles should die or be tossed into the wood chipper to a certain extent. But the only death penalty that I could really agree with is the one that happens during the act. Once the government gets their hands on somebody, injustices can occur, and sure, the government has absolutely killed plenty of innocent people and put them in the death chamber. I'm only a couple of miles away from the Missouri State Penitentiary, and I'll never forget doing a tour of the building where we got to go into the gas chamber and take a look at all of the faces of the people who were killed in that room they had on the wall. And I asked myself, I wonder how many of those people were innocent, because of course, a certain percentage of them just were going to be innocent. We're talking about the 1930s and 40s in mid Missouri. I mean, some black man slept with the governor's daughter. They probably put him to death, but somebody kind of chuckled at that concept as if the government never makes mistakes. And it absolutely does make mistakes. But one of the things we shouldn't allow the government to do is to make mistakes with the lives of the innocent. Not to, again, it's the moral question about whether or not somebody deserves to die is not the same as the question of who should mete out that kind of a punishment. Daniela Pensack, as always, your reports here are terrific. Thanks for being a good sport with my tough questions today. I should ask, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go?
Well, I did want to touch on the hate crime issue a little bit, if possible.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I am of the belief that I don't even think hate crimes should be a concept. A crime is a crime. He, defaced someone's private property. That should be the case. I wanted to say a few statistics. In the state of New York, there was only 11 hate crimes against male gays, and 2 against lesbians, and 3 against trans people. On the contrary, there has been, within a year, on the contrary, there has been 60 hate crimes against Jews, 7 against whites, and 4 against Catholics. So I think the priorities of not just New York City, but any especially liberal government, the priorities are screwed. And I think that we need to kind of reconsider about how we should approach these, or what we would consider as a hate crime.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Daniela Pensack, coordinator for Turning Point USA. Where can people find you online, Daniela, if they want to follow you online?
Yeah, so on Twitter, my handle is Pensack Daniela, just my last name and first name. And then on Instagram, I'm fairly active on there. It's official Daniela Pensac is my name. So that's where you can find me.
Official Daniela Pensac is her name. Daniela Pensac, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for getting up so early. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. What did you think of Daniela Pensac? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Got to give a big thank you and a shout out to our buddy Studio 314 for dropping a couple bucks in the tip charge. We appreciate that very much. That's awesome. You know what would be really cool is if the Wake Up America show, we can grow into a Liberty network. I would totally give Daniela Pensac her own show. Would you like to see something like that happen? Yeah, I would. I mean, it would be really cool if we could get big enough to where we could just hire her, give her her own hour-long talk show, and then you can look at her beautiful face and not have to see mine in the morning, right? Exactly. Wouldn't that be nice? Yes. I've got another story for you here that I wanted to share with you, but I'm having a little technical issues here, pulling things up on the show. Give me just 1 second. See if I can find this story, because I wanted to talk to you very briefly before we go about the economy, especially because I've been sort of warning everybody about what's been going on with these bank failures that have been going. What was this, like the third or the fourth bank failure, I think, that we've seen this year? And I didn't have that story queued up. Hold on, here we go. All right, there it is. Looks like I found it. All right, apologize for the slowness here. We are live, but I wanted to share this story with you. Here it is. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, might as well go over to my gold scene since we're going to be talking about gold anyway. But did you see this news about the First Republic Bank? Take a look at this. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. The demise of the First Republic Bank raises questions about the strength of the U.S. banking system and the broader economy that relies on it. This happened on Monday. The shutdown marks the nation's second largest bank failure in terms of size. First Republic Bank had $230 billion in assets last month, eclipsing the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, bigger than the SVB. 3 of the 4 largest bank failures in U.S. history have taken place over the last 2 months. The FDIC on Monday took control of this regional bank and brokered its sale to J.P. Morgan Chase. The deal will protect deposits, likely wipe out shareholders, and make the nation's largest bank even bigger. This is not a joke. This is where there's smoke, there's fire. There's fire pouring out of these buildings. We are in a precarious scenario economically. Now, listen, my friends over at Lear Capital have got you covered. They are the precious metals dealer. And this isn't just something that I recommend to people that we're not partaking in myself. Stephanie and I are in the process of putting our portion of our retirement into gold and silver, physical metals, which means that a portion of our retirement money will be in precious metals. Here's the thing. I'm sick and tired of the stock market up and downs. I know a lot of people are like, I'm doing great in the stock market. It's wild, it's wet, it's wacky. It's too much for us, right? I've hit middle age, and now I'm saying to myself, I want something with a little bit more stability. So we have decided that we want to hold on to the money and increase very slowly over time. Gold and silver is a great way to do that. Lear Capital, the sponsors of this show, have got a solution for you if you are concerned, just like I am, about this financial chaos that the country is currently undergoing. I saw Tim Pool the other day talking about it on the show the other day. He's like, is this story just so huge that nobody's talking about it? Because it does seem like it's not dominating the news and people are trying to poo-poo it and not talk about what's going on with our economy. Here's the solution. Call my friends over at Lear Capital at 1-800-885-2175. That's 1-800-885-2175. Or if you are phone averse, visit learaustin.com. That's LEARAUSTIN.com. Visit learaustin.com. Get yourself a free gold and silver packet if you are as concerned as I am about the state of the economy, and if you want to put your money in an asset, a resource that will grow steadily over time. I highly recommend our friends over at Lear Capital. Again, write that number down. I'll stand by while you do it. 1-800, you know that's easy. The hard part to remember, 885-2175. I appreciate all of our friends over there who are watching us today. Hey, did you guys see? I sold it to a couple more Trump toilet brushes yesterday. I found a few more over in China. Donald Trump would approve. But if you want a Donald Trump toilet brush, I know you're like, what is this, Austin? This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Visit the shop at apforlibertyshop.com and get yourself a Donald Trump toilet brush. Drain the swamp, right? Make toilets great again. If the deuce that you dropped this morning was huge, then you can clean it up, drain that swamp with our Donald Trump toilet brush over at ap4libertyshop.com. Dang, dude, it's the end of the show. What the hell? What is that all about? Man, 8:54. Well, I'll tell you what, I've been having an absolute blast. It's exciting to see all of our friends over on Rumble. Can I ask my Rumble friends for a favor very briefly? If you're watching us over on Rumble, make sure that you click like and subscribe to the show. The Wake Up America show broadcasts every Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. I might be hum foreign over at YouTube says, what about guns instead? Why not both, right? You know what I'm talking about? Get yourself both. Guns and gold. That's what I like. All right. It's nice to see. I might be Humper says, I do not love Andrew Tate, but I do enjoy watching Vice get you know what. Yes, me too. He just destroyed an ex-Vice reporter, the same one who did the hit piece. Oh, wow. I'll have to read that. Hey, do me a favor there. I might be hum foreign. I might be human. I might be human. That's what it is. Do me a favor. Send me that article, would you? Drop it as a DM. I'd love to read that. Gold-plated guns. Hell yeah. Right? Rumble rousers. We do need to get, the Cantina crews over on YouTube. What should we call the Rumble people? Rumble rousers? That's a good one. I'd love to hear some thoughts from our Rumble crowd. What do you guys want to call yourselves? The crew. I'd love to hear, toss me some ideas, right? And if you're watching us over on Rumble and you like the content that you see and heard this morning, again, click that like button and subscribe to the AP for Liberty channel over on Rumble. Help us to grow and spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. And we'll see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Thanks so much.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at ap4libertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.